don't know. We don't know. But our speculation and direction that we've been moving in for quite some time is that these are ruins of our previous advanced civilizations. I mean, even the Hopi Indians in America talk about that this is the fourth world, and that there was a previous world, a third world, where the technology was even far more advanced than it is today in the so-called fourth world, and that civilization was wiped out by some unimaginable cataclysm. And we have a space shuttle named Atlantis, and I'm thinking, we've always wondered why we have a space shuttle named Atlantis.
Yes.
Maybe they're trying to sell us something. And the other thing about it is that the glass ruins, the architecture, what I see there, and there's all sorts of different levels of ruins and artificial stuff on the moon. There's these enormous glass scaffolds that seem to rise 10, 20 miles above the lunar surface. Below that, there are, in a couple cases, we have, I think, pretty clear evidence of glass domes, like a watch crystal kind of a dome over craters. And we see also geometric formations that look like cities and street blocks and ruins and stuff underneath that. So you have different levels of technology there. But all of it, as you look at it, looks human. It looks like architecture. It uses as I look at the structural aspects of this stuff, these scaffolding structures, what I see is how I would design something like that if I was going to build it. I mean, I'm not an architect, but I am a structural designer. And so to me, it looks like human architecture. And then we ultimately go back to where this all started, which is actually on Mars, with the face on Mars, which at least half of it looks to me like a human face. And I can't imagine why aliens would build ruins that depicted a human face. So, I tend to think it is ours from a previous, very advanced time in our history. That it's the ruins of mankind, the mankind that Neil Armstrong talked about on Apollo 11.
Mike, do you think that they bombed that face on the Mars? If we compare the pictures from the earliest, the Viking missions, and then I don't remember which the next version of the picture that we got was, but there was speculation that they actually destroyed it in some way. What's your take on that?
No, I've heard that, and it's just because I think that just came out of the fact that the first Mars Global Surveyor image in 1998, which is commonly kind of called the cat box image, because it looked more like something that a cat might dig up in his cat box as opposed to litter box, as opposed to actually the face on Mars. Just because that picture was so bad, people started to say that. But no, what I see in all the different images of the face on Mars, and there are, I think at least 20 different images of the face on Mars have been taken now by different probes. They all show the same structure. Now, the interesting thing is that they do show it in different ways and in different levels of detail, because each instrument is different, and each instrument is picking up different subtle details. They're all CCDs, and they all sort of process information differently. Mm. And so in some cases you see certain aspects of it more clearly than others, and in other other versions, like Mars Global Surveyor, has a different appearance than it might on the Mars Express, the ESA's Mars Express. But no, it's what I expected to see. It's possible that it was once a symmetrical human face. It does appear to have some, if that's the case, it does have some collapse or damage on the right-hand side, or the eastern side, or what we call the cliff side, side facing the so-called cliffs at Cydonia. But, Richard said back in 1992 at the UN that at that time he was beginning to think it wasn't a symmetrical human face, but that it was half human and half lion, much the same way that the ancient Mayans used to have these masks that depicted this human feline sort of hybrid, half and half faces like that. And I tend to agree with him. I've thought that for a while, and I think that it might deliberately have been meant to appear to be two different faces as you mirror them one way and the other. So I don't agree with the idea that it's been destroyed. It could be eroded. And again, I think my favorite pictures of the face are actually the ESA, the European Space Agency Mars Express images, because they are directly overhead, almost directly overhead. They do not require much, if any, orthographic correction, which is part of where you get distortion in the NASA images, because they're taken from such poor angles that in order to make it flat and appear to be looking straight down on it, you get a lot of stretching and distortion. And when I see that color image of the face from the ESA, the Mars Express mission, I see a clearer, better version of exactly the same face that I saw in the original Viking data in 1976. Now, there are much higher resolution images from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, but they show detail on the face that to me is clearly marks it as artificial, clearly evidence of construction and so forth. But I love those color pictures, because when you show those to people after you show the original Viking data, they look at it and they say, yeah, it looks like a face to me. So, so I think that it's really a question of you have to kind of know what you're looking at and know what they've done to the image before they ever released it to you. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm gonna look for those ESA the Mars Express mission images, because I definitely want to see them. On darkmission.net, on the book website, there is on the left-hand side that says deleted sections, I believe it is. So in other words, it's parts of the book that didn't make it into the book. And if you click on that, it will take you to a version of the article, the part that was going to go into Dark Mission didn't make it, that was going to be about the Mars Express images, and you can see it all there, including links back to the originals. So I suggest you go there. Perfect. Well, I think I've seen them, but again, I definitely want to check out and compare, as you say. It's really, really interesting. And the reason I brought up this idea here about the bombing, of course, is because what NASA is going to do now here upcoming in October. I don't doubt that you haven't heard about it. This is the L-Cross program or mission that they're doing, and they're going to bomb in a desperate an attempt, I guess, in try to find water or something like that. What's your take on all this, Mike? What is this about? Well, the idea is that some of the dark the craters that are in constant darkness at the north and south poles may have had water ice form in them over the years from comet impacts or from maybe natural sources that might have once been on the moon. And so they're going to test the idea out by taking the L-Cross satellite. It's got essentially there's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and then there's the L-Cross. And they're going to detach a section of it and basically fly it into one of these dark craters at high velocity, and then do a spectral analysis of the dust cloud or the debris cloud that gets kicked up, and see if they can find water. And the idea is that if they can find water, then there is a water source that can be exploited for the idea of putting permanent bases on the moon. So that's obviously a desirable thing. And, I don't know. I'm not that suspicious of L-Cross right now. I tend to think it's pretty much the mission that it claims to be. It's going to be very interesting, though, because, we had a similar mission with the, I'm trying to remember the comet. It was a deep impact mission on the comet a few years ago. Right? Temple One. Yes. And they finish up on what you talked about. You're mentioning the L-Cross mission, and the Temple One, the previous mission that they did. Right. The Temple One mission was really interesting because they did essentially the same thing, where they flew, a chunk of a probe into the comet Temple One, and they were going to analyze the debris cloud that was generated. Now, this was really interesting because their model, NASA's model, the conventional science model of comets, is that they are dirty snowballs. They're chunks of water ice from the early formation of the solar system that were sort of floating around out in the nether regions, and they occasionally get perturbed and tossed into the inner solar system. And so their theory is that they are basically snowballs. They're ice. Dr. Tom Van Flandern, again, the late Dr. Van Flandern, who had the exploded planet hypothesis as his primary scientific theory, had argued that no, in fact, what they are is all comets are chunks of debris from these exploded planet or planets that were in the orbit of where Mars is now and where the asteroid belt is. And he actually did a lot of work where he traced back all of the long period comet orbits through the celestial mechanics all the way back to these two source points and these two orbits. So his argument is no, what you're going to find that you're going to get rock, because in his argument, all comets are they are